Yo, what's up, guys? It's Schizomanic, Sane Game Freak, back at it again with another one. Hey, if you want to ever hear your microphone peak, just go back at it again. Say, I don't even need the gunshots. I'll just keep saying back at it again with another Pokemon 2019 episode review. We're dealing with episode 2 now, back into the current day, and we're kind of getting our feet into the new gen and what we're dealing with. Now, it's been a while since I reviewed the series, so like the way Ash is portrayed and handled is very different from the way I used to know him. Even from like the X and Y days, he was never this like. It's obvious that this version of Ash is always about that childlike wonder that he loves. He's like a guy who just loves animals, or in this case, Pokemon. He just loves Pokemon. Now, granted, if I had watched Sun and Moon like that, I probably would have gotten the same feel, and this adjustment would be easier. But for me personally, since I didn't, I only heard glimpses and hearsay of Sun and Moon's anime. I have to get used to an Ash that's way more like not. I guess he's now acting his age in a sense. Like, and I guess that was like my issue with like Sun and Moon, because obviously he became the champion, Sun and Moon. But like Ash doesn't act like a person who became a champion. He still seems very like unrefined and unpolished, which is fine in the sense of like, well, he still has to grow, but like I guess that's the struggle, that like Ash's maturity level has actually gone down since the series first began. Like I would say he was pretty naive back in Kanto, but it wasn't like on the same tier as like how he is now. Like now it's like full like giddy 5-year old versus like kind of naive 10-year old. And then he started maturing through Johto and Hoenn and even Sinnoh. And then around Gen 5, he kind of got dumbed down a little bit. Gen 6, he kind of stayed neutral but a little bit more mature. He kind of matured up a little bit in Gen 6. And Gen 7 dropped him all the way back down to like, to just super like, I guess the word is naive, but I feel like he just feels more childish. So I have to get used to this version of Ash, because it's not the same kind of Ash that a lot of us grew up with. He's very younger and more naive, and he's very childlike. Um, and some people won't mind that. For me, it's kind of like a mixed bag. Like I don't hate it, but it does kind of like, it kind of hits that disconnect. Whereas the other versions of him, although we're childish, we're never so like far removed that you felt this huge gap between you and Ash, and the relatability is there. He now seems like a stereotypical like shonen main protagonist of like a kid series. Like that's what he feels like, which I don't know if that's really a good thing or not. I guess only time will tell. The episode essentially is just an introduction to our new. I want to call him the new professor, and he kind of is, but not really. We don't even really know what he specializes in other than just researching Pokemon. Like he has like the most. He's also not in the episode much, although he is the one who gives kind of the purpose of what they're supposed to be doing, which is gathering information on Pokemon that hasn't already been like discovered. Like this whole episode is them pretty much hanging around Lugia, and this when they get the little. And granted, I like that to a degree, because it's a way of learning about Pokemon without turning it into like, without making it kind of like mundane. Although I have a sneaking suspicion that will happen. I also appreciate that no matter what region we're in, we're going to be consistent about what Pokemon show up in that region. Like Yamper obviously is the exception, but he's also the professor's daughter's Pokemon, so it makes sense. The majority of the other Pokemon are only from like Kanto that you've seen. I believe this is Vermilion City, but it's going by its Japanese name, and because I don't know Vermilion City's Japanese name, I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure this is Vermilion. Um, for the most part, it's a pretty fun episode. It kind of tells that Koharu, although she cares about Go, she also doesn't care for Go's like very Chunibyo kind of attitude he has towards like catching Pokemon and like that obsession. She also seems to be kind of like a indifferent. It's weird. She doesn't seem to hate Pokemon, but she also seems to be like super indifferent towards Pokemon in the sense of like knowing more about him, which is probably the result of Go's overly obsessive nature with Pokemon. The problem I think I have is that right now we don't know why he's like that. He's just naturally like that. I kind of hope there's, because the backstory we got doesn't really, he hasn't changed. Neither of them are really changed since they were kids. Koharu still cares about him and they're in school, but like that's the extent of it. It also, I'd be curious if they're also going to bring up any continuity about like, well, why is it that Go and Koharu go to school but like Ash doesn't? Or are they going to make the argument, well, Ash is out of school because he went to Alola? Like, I'm curious how much of, like, that's kind of the main point of contention going into this new region. I mean, this new storytelling wave of Pokemon 2019. That's also weird to get used to because it's not like, that's not what I'm used to calling these shows. I'm used to them being referred to as the region, but because this series doesn't base itself in one region, unless you want to count this whole base in Kanto as their main region, but it's obviously Gen 8's anime representation. It's just weird. So I don't know how I feel about that dynamic or not, and how much of it they're gonna carry over. I'm just waiting at this point. This anime has stellar fucking music. I'll say that off the jump. The music was beautiful. Animation was gorgeous. I like how they're throwing hints into episodes about max rate battles, but not like going into full detail about it. I'm curious if that'll get expanded upon throughout the series. They've also referenced the fact that like Ash can kind of talk to Pokemon with having him and Lugia have that like connection sequence that only he heard. So Go is very like researcher type where he's like taking pictures of the fins and like the surface of Lugia, whereas Ash is very on emotional connection with Pokemon. Like he loves Pokemon. Like he has the emotional connection, whereas Go's just more interested. I don't even know if Go's interested in like the physiologically of the physiology of Pokemon, or just more so like he wants to know that so he could better like catch them. I guess we need to see more of the dynamic. They obviously already have like a brother thing going on where like Go and him kind of go back and forth about, they're cool sometimes, but they're not like overly friendly. Also, I like the fact that in certain scenes, and actually in the preview for the next week's episode, it kind of shows that Ash has way more experience of being reckless. As weird as that sounds, Ash has gotten very experienced about doing reckless, dumb shit when it comes to Pokemon. So he can like how he landed on the back of Lugia. Well, no, he landed on the foot of Lugia and then climbed up his legs to get on its back, whereas he had to help Go get up from his tail. I appreciate moments like that because it shows that he's still like ahead of Go in terms of a lot of things. They may be like both reckless, but I think Ash has more experience being reckless, which means he can hang in certain situations. Even in the preview of the next episode with the Bulbasaur and Ivysaur and possibly Venusaur, when they're climbing the walls, Ash has really no problem climbing that wall, whereas you can see for it before the scene cuts that Go struggles with it. I kind of hope they keep that as the dynamic where like, although Go will obviously get better depending on what happens in the future episodes, but like Ash definitely has his point. Like that's the points. I think that's the way it should be split. That like Ash is the more physically adventurous versus Go being more of like the hyperactive, but he's like more research heavy, especially considering that seems to be what the professor wants. I don't know Koharu's dynamic with Ash because although they meet this episode, they don't even talk. She doesn't even really acknowledge his existence throughout the entirety of their interaction, which I might be a problem because it's kind of, I don't know if it's just me, but I get the strong hint that they want Koharu to be like a love interest, and I don't know if that's the direct direction they're going, but it definitely feels like that's part of it. We also still don't know if they're going to do any references to older characters and Ash's standing with them, because Sun and Moon played with it and kept some continuity, but I don't know if they're going to maintain that continuity or if they're going to, or if Ash is like, I'm also curious if Ash is going to catch Pokemon, because I'm surprised there's like no reference to it whatsoever, to him having a team for Galar, especially if his whole premise, at least I'm assuming for the first season, is going to be this research nonsense, and they'll probably introduce elements of gyms and that stuff later on, which I'm okay with. It just makes it entertaining, and I'd be curious how often he's gonna switch. I'm not looking forward to next week because that means I got to get reintroduced to Team Rocket and their shenanigans. When I say reintroduced, I mean that in the sense that I haven't really watched a lot of Pokemon anime since around Gen 6. And Team Rocket has always been, like, as of right now, has always been my least favorite aspect of Pokemon. So I'm not inherently looking forward to seeing them again, especially knowing they don't seem to have changed that much. Uh, I would like the dynamic to be different, but I doubt it's going to be. But hey, here's being hopeful. The second episode's fine. It's kind of it's kind of second episode is very the amazing world of Pokemon Part 2, current generation. Um, and that's the kind of stuff I'm fine with. So we'll see where things go moving forward. But I also do like the fact that Yamper is a Pokemon that doesn't naturally like Ash, which might be like a reference to the fact that Koharu doesn't acknowledge his existence at all. We'll see, but like I said, I do find that interesting. It just depends on where they want to go with it. I get it, because the character's name is Go or Deku, depending on whether you care to refer to him as his Pokemon name or as the name that you probably know him more as because of My Hero being a fucking juggernaut. So, I don't know. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section in the comments. Please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below, and without getting tongue-tied. But it's hard because it's almost 10 o'clock at night for me, and I have to work tomorrow. God damn it! I might be a little bit unhinged, so I apologize. I think I'm gonna end this here before I lose my cool any further. Um, like I said, please leave your thoughts and comments down below. Follow on the socials and everything. Thank you guys for the support, and tell me what you thought about this week's episode. Just good. Thank you and good night, kids. Thank you. Good night.